Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. To ensure that we have a smooth webinar over the next 90 minutes, please take note of the following. Everything presented today is for your general information only and does not contain nor convey any type of legal advice. All materials presented today belongs to the organizers and speakers. This webinar is being recorded. You'll be muted by default when you join us. There's a Q&A icon on Zoom located at the bottom of your screen, which is now activated. At any point of time, you can click on the Q&A button to pose your questions to our speakers. For questions which are not answered, we will work with the speakers after the webinar and come back to you via written responses. As such, kindly ensure that the name and company which you have entered into your Zoom account is accurate.
Global Connect at SBF helps Singapore businesses expand into overseas markets. Since November 2019, we have guided Singapore businesses as they seize business opportunities in Asia and beyond. From identifying emerging trends to closing deals, we provide a full spectrum of overseas business expansion services. With Global Connect at SBF, you can learn about new markets, customers, and free trade agreements across the globe. Land opportunities and scale up in new markets, both physically and digitally. Localize overseas operations to ensure sustainable long-term success. Our Singapore Enterprise Centres in Indonesia and Vietnam also provide on-the-ground business and market development services. We also provide a dedicated digital B2B marketplace to quickly scale your business overseas. With Global Connect B2B, set up your company profile in minutes and start contacting thousands of regional partners and customers. Last year, Global Connect at SBF reached out to over 2,000 companies, completing many overseas expansion projects through its network of trusted business specialists and professionals. In 2021, Global Connect at SBF will also launch new initiatives for Singapore businesses to position themselves on the international stage. Explore business opportunities across ASEAN, South Asia, Japan, and other markets by joining us at Festival, our flagship digital event. Become part of the Global Connect at SBF community today and start enjoying exclusive benefits. Customized business advice, access to our overseas Singapore Enterprise Centres, preferential rates for services, as well as structured training, one-on-one advisory, and assistance on using free trade agreements to extract greater commercial advantages abroad. Global Connect at SBF, connecting your business to global opportunities.
Learn with us about new markets, customers, and free trade agreements. Land with us through our digital spaces and established networks. And localize with us and deepen your market presence overseas. The Professional Conversion Program for Internationalization Professionals support companies to recruit and train people to go global. It has the B2B e-commerce track to support companies that use e-commerce platforms for overseas expansion. And to find out more, simply scan the QR code, or you may reach out to my colleagues, Eddie or Elizabeth, by email. Sales of automobiles in general have fallen during the COVID-19 pandemic, with one exception: electric vehicles. The change of gear is real. In the year of 2020, almost 2.5 million batteries and hybrid cars are sold. A report from Bloomberg predicted that by 2040, at least 2/3 of the global car sales will be electric. And it's not just cars we're talking about, but also electric buses, electric motorbikes, scooters, and commercial vehicles, where adoption rates are expected to increase. For businesses, this is an opportunity to do our part to protect our planet Earth, and as well as for innovation and value creation. Ladies and gentlemen from Singapore, colleagues from overseas, welcome to Financing for Electric Vehicles, the 5th and final episode in our Sustainable Financing Awareness series. The SBF is pleased to be working together with UOB as our knowledge partner on a series of webinars revolving around different topics of sustainable financing every month. Whether you are a large MNC or small SME, whether you are in the automobile or logistics industry, or whether you are a provider of EV charging infrastructure, or simply looking into buying an EV van or industrial vehicle, we hope to increase your awareness and understanding of sustainable financing for EV projects today. And our objective is for you to live this webinar thinking in terms of how to partake in EV opportunities in Singapore and beyond. My name is Shu Lim from the Singapore Business Federation, and I'm delighted to be your host and moderator for today's virtual event. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we have an exciting lineup of speakers for you coming right up. Over the next 1 hour, we'll be hearing from 3 esteemed speakers representing a broad spectrum of the EV ecosystem. First, from our supporting partner, the Electric Vehicle Association of Singapore. And second, from our knowledge partner, UOB. Third, from Singapore company GoBell, that has just completed its acquisition of Blue SG just 2 weeks ago. And in between the 3 presentations, we will be conducting 2 polling sessions with you, our dear audiences watching this from home or in your office. At about 4 o'clock, we will start the question and answer session. And you're most welcome to start keying in your questions by clicking on the Q&A button located at the bottom of your screen throughout the webinar, whereby your questions will be seen by our panelists. If you are a Singapore company exploring EV projects overseas, or have any questions regarding sustainable financing, do sign up for our free business consultation session. Simply email my colleague Chi Hao, and representatives from UOB and SBF will be pleased to meet you after this webinar to assist you on your sustainable financing and internationalization journey. To kick off this event, I'd like to invite Mr. Paul Welsford, Vice President, Electric Vehicle Association of Singapore. A founding member of the EV Association, Paul works with his colleagues to support the acceleration of EV uptake. Paul has an engineering background in product design and manufacture from the United Kingdom. He started organizing EV enthusiast social events in 2016. And in his presentation entitled The Singapore EV Market, Paul will tell us more about what his EV association does in Singapore, the current EV trends that he's seeing, as well as the association's collaboration with like-minded partners in the region. Paul, the floor is yours.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Shu, and thank you very much to SBF for inviting us to speak today. Really, really appreciate it, and I hope all your attendees enjoy what we have to show and what we have to share, and I look forward to the panel discussion later as well. So let me just go straight into my slides. So so my presentation today is going to be covering the Singapore electric vehicle market. Just as an introduction to the Electric Vehicle Association, so we were founded in 2018, and we are a not-for-profit organization which comprehensively represents the EV industry here in Singapore. And really, we are trying to be the leading advocate for electric mobility. Currently, we have around 72 members, of which 22 are corporate and 50 are individuals or students. There's 3 main aims for the association. Number 1 is we're trying to promote. We really want to promote the use of electric vehicles and the adoption of electric and sustainable transportation. We try and be this one-stop resource for electric vehicle buyers, for business owners, and for fleet owners. And we do a number of initiatives to help promote electric vehicles. So we earlier this year, we released our first electric vehicle guide, and I have a quick slide on that later on. And also we are going to be releasing really soon our annual survey as well, where we survey the general public around the views around electric vehicles as well. And we use this data to support our corporate members in the decisions which they make around their products in the market. Number two is we provide a platform. We want to really help with standardization and consolidation of technology and understanding in the industry. So we have been supporting the government's move to update the local regulations around electric vehicle charging. And we help support the government agencies when it comes to making policies in the future. And that leads into our third main pillar, which is around partnership, and really is to help provide an industry perspective for government policies. The way we see it is we really are in between the government and the industry, as well as the individual owners as well. We become this bridging point between all of these different stakeholders. And this diagram sort of shows that quite well. You know, we have the industry, we have the EV owners, potential owners, and in the industry as well. The industry is not just the people selling the electric vehicles. It's not just the automakers and the dealerships. There's the fleet companies, those who are providing sort of transportation services, EV charging companies and the related companies for the hardware which they are using, and some of the services which they use, but all the way through to electricity suppliers as well. And you can often look at electric mobility as really being the coming together of two quite large industries, and that's the transportation industry and the energy industry. So having a single body which both of these two quite large industries can talk to about how to best move forward with electric mobility is really the reason for EVAS existing. And we've worked with a number of different government agencies over the last 3-4 years. And obviously right now we're working very closely with the Land Transport Authority and their new National Electric Vehicle Centre as well. What we try and do is we also try and do activities to try and support the rollouts of EVs. And so we work with our corporate partners to host events when they release new electric vehicles into the market, do technical series talks where they can explain more about the technology which they're providing here in Singapore. We've also hosted industry roundtable events as well. So the middle top image is an event we hosted in conjunction with the EDB, where we had industry partners join, and we had a number of workshops discussing how electric vehicles can support the logistics fleets in Singapore as well. And as mentioned before, we also released earlier this year, and we're hoping to release in the next couple of weeks, our latest EV guide. And this really was designed to be the 101, the introduction everyone needs to electric vehicles. It covers the basics of electric vehicle technology. It talks about the different models which are available in Singapore, the charging infrastructure which is available to people. It also explains all of the rebates and incentives which the government have introduced this year, and also covers a number of frequently asked questions which we often hear from the market as well. And really this guide is there to try and answer those questions and maybe break down some of the barriers people have. Some people still have concerns or still have a lot of questions around electric vehicles. We really want to try and give like a one-stop shop location for people to get those answers they need. So let's just talk about the current EV market in Singapore. So right now it is still quite small. So as of September, there are 2,696 fully electric vehicles in Singapore. If we include plug-in hybrids, we're over 3,350 in total. And these 2,700 odd vehicles are broken down into just over 2,200 cars. There's nearly 300 goods vehicles. Motorcycles are lagging behind with only 5. The taxi numbers are increasing thanks to SMRT strides with their new EV taxi fleet coming online. And we also have 74 buses as well. Now, this is currently less than 1% of the total vehicle population in Singapore. So we're under no illusions that this is still quite a small percentage of the overall amounts. But as I'll show in slides later on, this number is actually increasing quite quickly. And this is actually a sign that things are actually changing. So even though the numbers are quite small now, those numbers are going to increase very quickly. And I'll show you why later. And as you can see exactly here, so if we look at how things have changed over the years, so the graph on the left shows the sort of the year-by-year number of electric vehicles in Singapore. So back in 2017, only 350 vehicles were in Singapore. And technically at the start of this year, we only had 1,400. We're already nearly double that this year. It's actually a 92% increase year to date. And we've seen real drastic increases in the numbers in just the last 2 months. So you can see that nearly 700 have happened. In fact, over 700 have happened in just the last 2 months alone. And there's this definite trend of more than doubling year on year. COVID obviously last year in 2020 is a bit of a misnomer, but you can definitely see that we're definitely back on track with 2021. September was one of the biggest jumps, nearly 500 electric vehicles registered. And we're in a situation now that diesel vehicles are actually being deregistered in numbers much higher than the number of EVs being registered. So we're already seeing that the fleet in Singapore is starting to shift away from high polluting vehicles over to low polluting vehicles with electric mobility. And why is this happening? So there's a few forces at play here. Things like government incentives are playing a big role here. So things like the vehicle emissions scheme, a similar scheme for commercial vehicles, early adopter rebates, and road tax improvements have helped a lot. There's also a wider choice now. So back in 2018, when we first started the EV Association, you could count the number of vehicles available on pretty much on one hand. Now we have over 20 models and variations. Tesla in the market, and Tesla really are one of the main drivers, one of the reasons why we see the increase in numbers. Out of those 500 which we saw registered last month, 350 of those were actually Tesla alone. Cost savings when it comes to fuel and maintenance are being noticed by many as well, and so people are starting to see that they can get really good value. And on the right hand side, I've just given an indication that these numbers may be a little bit out of date now, because I know the COE prices have gone up quite a bit in the category B function, but a couple of months ago, you could get a Model 3 standard edition for around $155,000 to $160,000, including the COE. An equivalent fossil fuel vehicle, a BMW sort of 3 Series 318i, would cost you $220,000. And when it comes to performance, you could argue the Model 3 has a higher performance as well. So people are seeing that. So people who are already in the market for these sorts of vehicles are really considering electric vehicles, especially Teslas, because they tick all the boxes and they actually provide an affordable price point for them as well. We're also seeing improvements in the EV charging system as well, with expansion of networks which already exist. The first government tender was awarded earlier this year as well, and so those chargers will start to be deployed by the companies which have been awarded that. And also more fuel forecourts are adding charge points as well. So the number of charge points in Singapore is only going to increase in line with these increases in the number of EVs on the road as well. There's also an increase in visibility. It feels like almost every month there is a story which comes onto our screens or onto our into our TV screens or into our news feeds about a good news story around electric vehicles in Singapore. So we've seen things like SingPost bringing in electric vehicles. We've had CNA Insider doing a talk around electric vehicles as well. More and more electric vehicle charging stations being installed, and things like Hyundai coming into the country, actually building an R&D center and factory. So electric vehicles by the end of next year, hopefully, will be being produced in Singapore as well. So not only is Singapore going to be a user of electric vehicles, it is also going to be a producer of them as well. And a lot of people as well are looking at electric vehicles just due to the sustainable credentials. Obviously, right now we have COP26 happening over in Glasgow in the UK, and it's a really high part of a lot of people's agendas is how can I reduce my carbon footprint? And there's a lot of information which shows that electric vehicles on the whole will lead to a greater reduction in carbon emissions out into the atmosphere. And you can see that just from the LTA data, which shows this grid factor which is used, that things like a Tesla, so these are the exact same vehicles as before, a Tesla is the 2.5 times less carbon is emitted for every kilometer which it drives. So especially for those who drive quite a lot of kilometers, this really can lead to quite a large amount of carbon reduction. And also there are developments happening around battery recycling, which is obviously a thing which concerns people as well. And electric vehicle batteries have many future lives after being inside a vehicle, things like second life in grid storage, in energy storage systems for buildings, and even being broken down and into raw materials and reused again into batteries as well. So the long-term effect of these vehicles is really a much lower impact. So where are we going? Where's the future market going here in Singapore? Well, the Singapore Green Plan for 2030 really has some ambitious targets to try and strengthen these commitments which we have under the Paris Agreement. Some of these things include the cessation of registrations of diesel cars and taxis in 2025, and a number of the taxi fleets have already committed to doing this prior to that date anyway. Also, 8 of the HDB towns are planning on being EV ready by 2025 as well. So that's the map which you can see on the right-hand side. So in these districts, they are looking that for every single HDB car park, there will be EV chargers of some quantity in every single one of those car parks. And this is part of the plans to have 60,000 charging stations across Singapore by 2030. 40,000 of those in public car parks, 20,000 in private premises. And also, finally, the plan is that by 2030 as well, all car and taxi registrations to be of cleaner energy. This will mean that by 2040, due to the 10-year COE, we should have a full phase out of the internal combustion engine in Singapore by 2040. And what does 2030 look like? Just as an idea of what sort of scale we're looking at. So at 60,000 charge points, this would really be a huge difference in our transportation system by 2030. If we assume that there's going to be 5 electric vehicles on the road for every charging station, we're looking at 300,000 vehicles. It's a similar sort of numbers we sort of see in Europe for this sort of ratio. There's also a chance that it could be even higher in Singapore, just due to the fact that the amount of sharing of charging infrastructure is going to happen. At this sort of level, we're looking at 1 terawatt hour of energy use being needed every single year. If we assume that every one of those 300,000 vehicles drives the average 16,000 kilometers. Again, many vehicles will drive more than that as well, especially the taxis. This would also lead to a huge amount of CO2 being saved. So almost a kiloton a day is going to be saved when we're at this level. And really what we're seeing now is this EV charging is really supporting the future growth of EVs. So more people are looking at buying EVs because they're seeing more EV chargers. And at the same time, EV charging operators are putting more out into the market because they're seeing more EVs. So I think that the chicken and egg analogy is kind of being broken at the moment. And we're now in a feedback loop where really the number of EVs is going to support EV chargers and vice versa as well. So the first steps, and I realize I've only got about a minute left, so I'm going to rush through this quite quickly. So we were definitely going to see big movements in places like fleets where higher distances are required. We're definitely going to see a much faster rollout of electric vehicle charging stations, and also looking at brand new business models. So companies which are providing different services to the market beyond just the ownership of electric vehicles as well. I'm going to skip this slide due to time, but I would say very quickly that this is an example here of what's happened in another country. In Norway, we've definitely seen a huge amount of increase, and we're at the point now where over 72% of sales in Norway are EVs. They're pure electric vehicles. So this has happened over the space of about 5 years. There's been a really big acceleration. In Singapore, we are definitely getting there. So if I look at the last month, with about 500 EVs being registered, we're looking at around 8% of all of the vehicles registered in September in Singapore were electric. So I know we're at the start, but this is quite a big proportion which is happening in registrations, and that number is only going to increase. And so for my final slide, I just wanted to say that we also work with a number of other EV associations in the region. So we have partnerships with the EV associations of Malaysia, Thailand, and the Philippines, and other associations are being formed in the coming years. So we are looking forward to continuing to work with them, especially as borders open up again and doing joint events. So we hope to see you at some of those as well. That's my last slide. So thank you very much for your time, and I'll pass it back to you, Shu. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul. And indeed, you have rightfully pointed out that the EV industry is a combination of the transport and energy sectors. And we're really looking forward to the day when Singapore has our first EV, and we could really do our part to reduce carbon emissions on that sense. Also in line with what COP26 is talking about. And ladies and gentlemen watching this webinar from home, do feel free to type in your questions at any point of time. Just click on the Q&A button located at the bottom of Zoom to post your questions to our speakers. Now, before we move on to our second speaker, we would like to get your thoughts on your views on sustainable financing. So think about sustainable financing and how it relates to your business. Why are you not tapping into sustainable financing at the moment? And if you are keen on sustainable financing, in which area are you most interested in? Would you like to know more about financial grants available in Singapore, which you can tap on for your overseas expansion? May I have the poll questions launched, please? You will now see a poll with 4 questions on your screen. Answer all questions and click on Submit. Now the poll will be left on your screen for the next 5 minutes, so do take your time to answer all of them. We are privileged today to have Ms. Kathryn Yu, Head of Automotive and Machinery Equipment and Component, Sector Solutions Group, UOB, with us today. Kathryn joined UOB in 2019 to lead the automotive and machinery equipment component sector in the region. She has over 15 years of finance experience focusing on transportation in the China market. And in her current role, she drives business initiatives and develops banking solutions that meets the needs of her client within the sectors. Kathryn will tell us more about UDrive, EV integrated solution. She'll give us an update on Singapore's policy timeframe for cleaner vehicles, the key players in the EV value chain, as well as UOB's green financing solution for EVs. I now call upon Kathryn to share her presentation with us. Kathryn, please.
Okay, thank you. So thank you for SPF to help me to share our UDrive solution. Actually, our UDrive solution is a comprehensive electrical vehicle financing solution for this ecosystem. And we launched it in Singapore this September. Before I introduce our UDrive solution, I want to give some context of this solution launch. So first, the Singapore government has laid down the time frame of ICE vehicles phasing out, just the Paul previous shared. So basically by 2025, 4 years from now, there's no more new registration of diesel cars in the taxis, and also by 2030. So all new taxis and cars have to be cleaner energy vehicles, which includes the hybrid models as well as electrical vehicle models. So along with this time frame, actually the government also introduced the new vehicle emission scheme to reduce the adoption cost of the electrical vehicles. So as a result, actually we have seen the growing business activities to move towards the EV transition. Maybe I take example, taxi companies and riding companies like Grab and SMT. Actually, they announced the EV fleet transition to accelerate the fleet electrification this year. And in fact, LTA also did a study showing that public transport and commercial vehicles offer the bigger potential for the electrification. Next, please. So for the moment, the availability of the charging points actually are top pain points for EV adoption, and the government initiatives and the supportive policies actually have becoming more important to develop the charging infrastructure. So in fact, we have been seeing Singapore government efforts to accelerate the national deployment of the charging points. For example, the government have a target of 60,000 charging points by 2030. Also, the government have efforts to develop the shared charging infrastructure. And next, please. The last one. So when coming to the players in the EV ecosystem, there are most of the new entrants like technology companies or oil energy companies in the area of the charging infrastructure, and also in the area of auto OEM as well as the dealership. We have also seen the traditional players actually, they are trying to come up with new business models, or they have developed new strategies to fit into these EV trends. So maybe I take Singapore, for example. Traditionally, actually, there is no vehicle production facility. However, we are seeing the Hyundai come to here and set up an EV assembly factory and R&D center. And also this year, Hyundai starts to test their battery as a service model in the market. So also we have seen some Chinese brands like BYD and Dongfeng, actually they also becoming quite active in this EV space and aiming to capture some market share in Southeast Asia, including Singapore, actually whereby the Japanese and the European brands traditionally take a dominant position. And next please. So given this background, actually our banking has been thinking how we can support the companies who are facing the EV transition. Actually, the team has done a lot of research to understand the business pain points of the different players in this area, such as the high cost of the EV adoption and the availability of the EV charging infrastructure, as well as the battery concerns. So by this September, we launched the U-Drive solution in Singapore, which is end-to-end solution to support all the players in the whole value chain. Next, please. So what benefits? Next, please. So what benefits we can bring to the players in the ecosystem? First, we have a customized solution for auto brands and depending their business focus as well as the strategy. And second, we also have a comprehensive suite of financing package to support our auto dealers go to market quicker. And third, when coming to the end user, for individual end user, we have a Go Green Car Loan package. And with the Go Green Car Loan package, the consumer can receive instant approval for their purchase of the electrical vehicles. And for corporate end user, UB also has a fast lane financing process for the purchase of the electrical vehicle as well as the charging equipments. So lastly, in terms of how we can support the charging requirements, actually the bank can also form a charging co-sponsorship with either auto brands or dealers to motivate the end users to shift to the greener vehicles. So next, please. In details, along this value chain, so for auto dealers, the customized solution, including but not limited to, for example, CapEx financing, captive financing, or inventory financing, or cash management solution. And also for some auto brands, they have want to launch new business model, for example, battery as a service or the leasing of the EV fleet. Actually, we also have a tailor-made solution for auto brands. And for auto dealer or distributor, our EV dealer financing package includes the green trade facility, green floor stock financing to support their inventory financing. And in the meantime, we are also exploring how to support the EV battery extension warranty. So for the moment, it's still in the exploration stage. When it comes to the end user, we also have a green car loan to support the individual end user as well as a green HP loan for corporate end user. And in the space of the charging infrastructure, we also can support the charging equipment requirement via green HP loan package. The next one, please. So now I want to share example of our partnership between the Hongse and UB. Hongse actually is a long-established auto dealer in Singapore. Previously, they carried the premium brands, and now they are authorized dealers of the BYD T3 commercial vehicles and another Chinese brands, Dongfeng. So the Hongse want to promote the 3 electrical commercial vehicles in Singapore. They are DFSK, EC35 or 31, and the BYD T3. All the models are fully electrical commercial vehicles. So we support the Hongse via our green dealer financing package to import the electrical vehicles from overseas market. And also we have formed a partnership to co-sponsor the end users when they buy the electrical vehicles, the specific electrical vehicles from the wholesale. So for wholesale customers, they can enjoy the special interest rate when they take the green hire purchase loan from the UB. At the same time, they can also receive the free Shell 1,500 kilowatts charging credits. So this is showing what kind of charging co-sponsorship under our UDrive solution. Next one, please. So last, I want to share our UB sustainable financing page. If you are interested to learn more sustainable financing solution we offer to different sectors. For example, UB also offer the sustainable financing for the real estate sector. We also have a U-Solar solution for solar energy, as well as our U-Drive solution for electrical vehicles. You can scan the QR and to find a more solution you might be interested. I think that's all. Over back to you, Sue.
Thank you so much, Kathryn, and congratulations to UOB on the launch of your U-Drive program 2 months ago. And indeed, the green financing solution looks comprehensive to support our SPF members and SME on their electrification journey. Now, before we move on to our second poll, I would like to share the results from the first poll that we have done just now. Can I have the results from the first polling session, please? So for the first question, in which areas of sustainability are you most keen on pursuing? And we have got almost 31% of the people in the room said that they're interested in that, followed by green trade financing, as well as renewable energy. And on the second question, would you consider taking on sustainable financing for your projects? So we do have 43% who said that they're undecided because they do not know what is sustainable financing. So we hope that you can stay on in the webinar with us so that we can further try to explain what is it that we're trying to do in terms of EV and hopefully increase your knowledge. But I think 51% are keen to take on sustainable financing. So I think that's also very encouraging indeed. And on the third question, what would be the main reason if you decide not to adopt sustainable financing? And about 6 in 10 say that they're not sure how to go about doing so. So which is why we really are here to help you on and answer some of your questions. And the last question, would you be interested to explore financial grants which could help take your businesses overseas? So we have about 66% of the people saying yes. So I think that's good to hear. And my colleagues from SPF will be following up with you after the webinar to answer some of the questions that you may have. Right. And let's move on to our second poll for today. Think about what will make you take up sustainable financing. And should you have a project in mind, what is the time frame like for your business? May I have the poll questions launched, please? You'll now see a poll with 3 questions on your screen. Answer all questions and click on Submit. This will serve as a basis for our discussion at the Q&A session later. And again, the questions will be left on your screen for 5 minutes. Right. And so, ladies and gentlemen, if you are watching this from your home, right, so feel free to answer, to type in your questions and get our expert panels to answer some of your questions during the Q&A session later. And and if you're interested to find out more about what is sustainable financing, as well as what is how SPF can help you on your internationalization journeys, be it on EV or other type of sustainability projects, please feel free to contact my colleague Chi Hao, and we will be happy to answer some of your questions and really hope to support your journey in sustainable financing as well as your going global journey. Right. Okay. So our last speaker is Mr. Kelvin Tay, Managing Director, Future Mobility and Advisor to CEO, GoBell Group. GoBell is a Singapore company specializing in industrial vehicle leasing. And 2 weeks ago, it has just completed its acquisition of electric car sharing company Blue SG. And congratulations to that. Kelvin leads innovation and transformation in GoBell and seeks to create new revenue streams through venture building. He heads Move.sg, Southeast Asia's acceleration program that focuses on sharing economy, electric and autonomy. Today, Kelvin will tell us more about EVs, opportunities, trends, and challenges. Kelvin, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kelvin, and currently I head up the Future Mobility Division in GoBell. So I'll just do a very quick introduction, for those who haven't met us before. GoBell looks at our business in two key horizontals, namely the core business, as well as future mobility. In the core business, basically we undertake activities in three verticals, namely distribution, leasing, and financial services. For the distribution business, look at us as a commercial vehicle dealer, as well as a forklift dealer. So we are market leaders in certain categories of vehicles, light duty trucks, more than 3.5 tons payload and above. We distribute forklifts in 3 markets, Singapore, Malaysia, and Vietnam. And the brands that we distribute can be found below in the slide. I won't go into the details. On the leasing side of things, we are the largest commercial vehicle leasing company in Singapore with a fleet of more than 6,000 vehicles. We are the largest B2B car leasing company in Singapore with a fleet of 2,000 cars. And we also lease forklifts, and we are one of the largest forklift leasing companies in Singapore as well as in Malaysia and Vietnam. Last but not least, we have a financial services arm, and which is basically a non-bank financial institution. And we have given out about $1 billion of loans since inception about 6 years ago, with a very low default rate of 0.13%. So basically, we do all kinds of loans, from invoice financing, factoring, to property-backed loans, as well as we finance truck dealers and car dealers, etc. So these three pillars in our core business, accounts for about 1,000 employees, of which 800 in Singapore and 200 are in the region. Moving on to future mobility, this is basically our CEO's vision to create new S-curves for the business. Pay attention maybe only to the middle part, which is venture building and venture investing. I won't talk about the rest of the pillars. So we have been investing in startups for the last 5 years under our corporate venture capital fund, which is basically single LP, investing off of our balance sheet. We invested in about 17 startups, of which 8 of them are from Israel. And this fund actually did reasonably well, doing about 40% IRR, which puts us at the top 25 percentile in terms of global funds. And through investments in these startups, we get to learn about the new technologies, the latest technologies in the marketplace, in our domain of mobility. And from there, we figure out what are the businesses we want to build on our own as technology companies, and that's where venture building comes in. So in the venture building vertical, we have built 3 companies which you can see in the slide here. The first one is SWOT Mobility, which is a ride pooling and logistics pooling algorithm company. The second one is X Square, which is an autonomous forklift / intelligent warehousing company. And the other one, which is in the mobility space, is Blue SG. For Blue SG, it's the first time that we are acquiring an existing business and then adding on the technologies, rather than building the technology from scratch. So for these venture builds, the intent is to scale them up into regional or even global champions. And usually we would onboard third-party investors, strategic investors to fund the growth of these businesses. So for SWOT, for example, we have SMRT as an investor, ComfortDelGro, EDB, etc. So basically, just to sum up, Future Mobility is a twin engine of having venture building and venture investing, and both of which are very complementary activities that help us to drive new growth engines for the group. So moving on to the content proper. So I was asked to talk about the opportunities and challenges, of EV adoption and some of the key trends. Basically, how we look at mobility, by 2030, can be summarized in this slide, and this is of course very specific to the businesses that we operate. But some of the key trends we can see here is that we expect car ownership to drop very significantly globally. The number of cars may not change. Singapore, for example, has committed to maintaining the COE quota, so not increasing and not decreasing. But the types of vehicles would be very different. They would not be owned by individuals. They would most probably be owned by fleets. So with a drop of 10 to 20% as a mega trend that we see, with sustainable transport becoming more and more important, and that's why there are many seminars, and many webinars, on sustainability, electric vehicles, etc. And the last one is polycentric town planning as a trend that we see for the next 10 years. I think Singapore has already started to do this. You will see in the new towns like Tengah, Punggol Innovation, Punggol North Digital District, etc., that the towns will be planned such that the individuals who live there can live, work, play, and learn without having to leave that town for most of the time. And with these three key trends, we think that there will be a lot of interesting opportunities in on-demand bus, car sharing, as well as fractional leasing or basically subscription, car subscription or car as a service, whichever term you want to use. And the bubbles here shows some examples of what's available globally, and below it shows how we think we can play in the market with our various entities, including car leasing, including car sales, as well as sharing and on-demand bus. We think that mobility is going to be multimodal for the individuals, so you will have people that use multiple mobility modes. So these are, so they will mix and match over here in the various options. We didn't put in taxi and ride hailing, but those are also options. Just that we are not involved in those categories at the moment. So the trends are really clear for electric vehicle adoption, and I would like to share a few opportunities that GoBell has been getting into, and maybe that might spark some interest in the attendees to also look into these markets or even collaborate with us. So I was asked to actually talk a bit about car sharing and about BlueSG. BlueSG is the only EV-focused car sharing service in Singapore. It is also the only A to B car sharing business in Singapore, which makes it extremely environmentally friendly from many perspectives. So other than the fact that it uses electric, because it is typically used by the customers to get from point A to point B, the car itself is very efficiently utilized. So you won't have long periods of time when the car is sitting there and not serving anyone, simply because people use it to move from point to point. So this business has been in operation for about 4 years. We just acquired it. We were officially the owner on 14th of October. We have a fleet of 700 electric vehicles in this business. We have sold more than 120,000 subscriptions. Apologies, this is not updated. And we have done more than 2 million rentals to date. And the users who are using this service can have access to 1,500 charging points, so they can plan their trip to start where they live and potentially end in their destination, and they can do it the reverse way when they need to come home. So we think that EVs for car sharing is extremely viable, and in fact it's going to be an up and coming way that users would engage with car sharing. So this is one opportunity. Car sharing, we can apply this to many other types of sharing. In the regional markets, it can be two-wheeler e-bike sharing. In certain markets, it can be the e-scooter, but definitely sharing, using an electric kind of a vehicle is a very attractive value proposition at the moment. The other one is leasing or purchasing electric vans. This is an example. This is a van that we distribute in Singapore. It's basically a photon electric van. And I won't go into the details of the prices and everything. But I think that currently what I would like to highlight is that the total cost of operation of an electric van in Singapore is already lower than a diesel van. So this is something that with a combination of the government incentives and also the charging point operators setting up infrastructure in Singapore, it's becoming a very viable option in Singapore. So I won't go into details of maintenance costs being low and things like that. I think these are common knowledge, but what I'd like to highlight is for electric vans, and this van has a 1-ton payload. So for 1-ton payload and below, it has become viable. For the larger form factors, there's still some way to go because of the battery cost being exponentially higher as we go into larger and bigger form factors. But today, you should already start leasing or purchasing an electric van. It is already commercially viable. So the other one that I wanted to touch upon just very briefly is combining EV with on-demand algorithms, specifically for bus. So we do have another company called SWOT Mobility. I won't go into too many details here, but using on-demand bus and pooling algorithms would already reduce your carbon footprint very significantly. And if you combine that with the use of EVs, you can significantly lower your carbon footprint. So currently this is viable for small form factors. So if you are using the van I showed earlier on to put 9 passengers to 12 passengers, it's already viable if you're operating such a service. If you try to do a bigger bus, there is still some way to go. We still need to wait for the prices to come down a bit moving forward. And I think the last topic I have to cover is challenges to EV adoption. So battery for the larger commercial vehicles, as I mentioned earlier on, there is really some way to go. So this is a chemistry problem, and we just have to wait for the scientists to solve it. So we need to wait for these costs to drop. Secondly is the optimization of EV usage. Because the way you use an electric vehicle is very different from an ICE vehicle. In an ICE vehicle, you just run it down to 0 and then you top it up to full. This is not the best way to use an EV. Opportunistic charging combined with overnight charging, would make better sense. There is also a pooling effect that if you can make use of, you can make it even more optimal. But what is for sure is in most cases, you shouldn't be using the EV in the same way that you use your normal vehicle, your diesel vehicle. The other one is user customer education. We spend a lot of time on this. In fact, it's almost like we are an EV consultant to a lot of our B2B customers. whether it's a corporate that wants to lease electric cars, or whether it is a company that wants to, the e-commerce company that wants to lease electric vans from us. And last but not least is charging infrastructure. I think we are heartened by the fact that the government is doing a lot in the Green Plan 2030 to build up 60,000 charging stations. It will still be there will still be some inconveniences that we have to bear with in terms of the footprint, in terms of slow versus fast, and things like that. But we believe that technology can be used to overcome some of these challenges, and we do have a very committed government who is in the process of solving all these issues for us in the future. So with that, it brings me to the end of my presentation, and over to you, Shu.
Thank you so much, Kelvin, and thanks for your presentation. And it's great to see all the great stuff that GoBell is doing in Singapore and in the region. So audiences watching this from home, please feel free to type in your questions to our speakers. And before we move on to our Q&A session, I'd like to share the results of our second poll that was conducted just now. May I have the results from the second polling session, please? Right. Kathryn, coming from a bank, if I can get you to comment on the results of the second polling session. And if I can get you to, correct.
Thank you, Sue. Okay, so the most top choice is actually potential cost saving. Okay, I can understand that as a customer, they are quite sensitive of the interest or financing cost that they will get when we talk about the sustainable financing. Actually, the bank actually is also encouraging the company to towards the sustainable journey. And for example, we also have a sustainable link loan. Actually, this sustainable link loan is tied to the some KPI. When you achieve this KPI, actually you can enjoy your lower interest rate. So when the company actually is ready to start their sustainable journey, I think, however, they still take some time to for example, for fleet owner, take some time to convert their fleet into the fully electrical vehicle. I think most fleet operator or owners still take some time. So this is the right time to they consider to SLL, and also while they can enjoy the lower interest cost in this along this way. This is the first question. And second one, when are you expecting to embarking? Oh, actually, the half have already taken on suitable financing previously. Oh, that's good. So we already have some company already take the sustainable financing solution. Currently taking up. So just like previous share, actually with the Singapore, the green plan, actually we are seeing the more growing business activities in this EV transition. So after we launched the UOB U-Drive solution this September, actually we already successfully have several mandates to offer the green financing to auto dealers. So that's why we have seen some companies already take up the sustainable financing solution. Actually, the bank will also considering to expand our sustainable financing package to include the SLL, so we can offer more flexibility to the fleet companies in the near future. That's all from me.
Thank you so much, Kathryn, for your very comprehensive thoughts on our polling results. And ladies and gentlemen, it's time for our Q&A session today. So if I can get my colleagues to do the spotlighting to get all the speakers up on our screen. Right, perfect. So we'll try our best to answer as many questions as possible, but for questions that we can't answer today, we'll work with the speakers and email the responses back to you, our dear audiences watching this from home. If I can just turn to Paul to pose this question to you. So is building charging points something that should be undertaken or driven by the government? Or is it part of the something that the private sector should do?
So it has to be a collaboration between the two. I think if we were to rely entirely on the government to push it, or rely entirely on the private sector, I feel that we wouldn't achieve the results we need to achieve, which is a real rapid expansion of EV charging infrastructure, especially here in Singapore. So it needs to be a concerted effort between the two, and it is one of the reasons why EVAS exists, to try and be a bit of a bridge between the industry and the government, to try and make sure that both of these sides are really discussing to make sure that they achieve something which both sides want, right? Fundamentally, the public sector is going to really be needed to be able to, invest in doing this and to build it out and provide the business models and to provide the services which EV drivers need when it comes to charging. But at the same time, they need that support from the government to be able to mandate things, to provide the market forces which are going to be needed to actually allow them to do that in a sustainable way as well. So it's a bit of a cop-out answer. It's kind of both. So I would say that they're equally responsible when it comes to the EV charging infrastructure.
Right. Thank you so much, Paul. And if I can turn to Kathryn, a question for you would be, if my estate manager intends to install charging points in our estate, right? Would this qualify for sustainable financing support from UOB?
Yeah, of course, charging equipment financing actually is qualified as a green financing. So I suggested the company can contact our relationship manager, and also the financing package for the charging equipment financing is already be ready for UOB. So if you have any issues, you want me to link up with our relationship manager, I'm happy to help.
Okay. Good to hear that. And if I can turn to Kelvin, so recently there has been announcements by both Thailand and Indonesia to only sell EV vehicles from 2035 to 2040 onwards. And do you think that there's any opportunities for Singapore companies to be working in such EV sectors in the region?
Most definitely. I think there are a lot of opportunities to be involved in the regional markets. For now, we have seen a big trend in the interest in the level of in two-wheelers, in the electric two-wheelers sector. For the rest of the vehicles, I see opportunities for us to go in with a complete smart city kind of a solution. So, for example, if we go in with a car sharing kind of a business with algorithms or software that we can provide to providers there that we want to run EVs. I understand that a lot of Singapore CPOs, I think there's a lot of opportunities, because charging is going to be something that everyone would need in those markets which are phasing out electric vehicles.
Okay, and I suppose that
phasing out internal combustion engines. Sorry.
Okay,
yeah.
So and I also suppose that there will be interested parties who are joining us at our webinar, interested to participate in such opportunities that you have mentioned just now. I think we have received one question. If any of the panelists here would like to take this question on the life of batteries for EVs, and the question goes whether the panelists can share the end of life management of batteries for EV, as this is also a global challenge when we talk about the EV landscape.
Yeah, maybe I can just take that one really quickly. We did a bit of research on this as well, but more from a fleet owner perspective or EV owner perspective. End of life battery is a regulated. Is bound by regulation in most countries, in most developed markets, and Singapore is one of those countries. So you cannot just throw away the battery. It's illegal. So you have to recycle it. So there are laws in place, and there are procedures in place, and certification for the recyclers who actually do this. So I would say that it's not an issue if you are in a developed market like Singapore. It could be an issue if you are in a market where the controls are not quite so strict. it could become an environmental problem when you have dumping of vehicles. But by and large, for Singapore, no worries. It's not going to hurt you. Also, to answer on the end of life, I think there are some, who may wish to take these batteries and sell them and resell them for second life usage. This one will be very specific to the battery chemistry. So, rule of thumb: if the car is cheap, very unlikely you can reuse these batteries for other purposes. Very unlikely. It's possible, but very unlikely. There will come a point where there are many second-hand batteries around. So if you think that you can make a business out of it, I would caution to look more specifically at the details. Starting all the way from the battery manufacturer. Did they make it such that it can be recycled? Did they make it such that the cells can be taken out? Did they make it such that it can be repurposed for other purposes? And take note also on the battery chemistry. Is it NMC or is it LFP? In general, LFP is less reusable than NMC. And then of course, there are new chemistries coming out as well. So this is something to take note of. But personally, I don't think there is an opportunity to make money out of it. I see this as an obligation, an environmental obligation that is part of the cost of having such a vehicle.
Okay, so really talking about what happens at the cradle before we talk about all the end, all the way to the grave. And I think there's one question which I'd like to pose to Paul, if that's possible. What is the forecast for EV adoption for trucks with higher GVW, and how will infrastructure change, like charging stations for such vehicles?
Yes, it's a good question, and we're already seeing here in Singapore that there are a number of the heavier goods vehicles which are becoming available. I know there is the BYD T9 is the most commonly seen here in Singapore right now, and a number of waste collection services have already started to utilize this vehicle and putting on things like waste collection bodies to be able to run those sorts of waste collection routes. And I also believe that it's becoming a bit of a requirement for a lot of these waste collection contractors that a proportion have to be cleaner energy vehicles. So we can definitely see that in some of these situations, companies are moving towards using that. I think right now in Singapore specifically, we have a limited number of options. So the BYD T9 is one of the few which is able to handle such higher loads and for a much bigger payload. But more options are available. We see other options over in Europe, and some of these manufacturers are seeing what's happening in Singapore and are looking to enter the market to be able to support. When it comes to the charging infrastructure, dedicated infrastructure is almost certainly going to be needed to be able to support these sorts of fleets, especially if they are doing quite specific sorts of routes, such as things like waste collection. People are maybe not going to want a public charger to be shared by a waste collection charging station for obvious reasons. But the charging infrastructure usually is higher power. So normally you're going to look at having over 100 kilowatt sort of DC charging stations are going to be required to be able to support these vehicles. Even relatively lower power DC chargers, but sort of 25, 30 kilowatt charging stations. These are relatively high power compared to your normal overnight chargers you'll see in residential situations. You'll need those though for overnight charging of these sorts of larger trucks. So there is going to be a bit of more of a demand on the power grid infrastructure to be able to support these sorts of vehicles. But they are the ideal vehicles to look at electrifying, really, but due to their high utilization, the fact that they often are driving every single day, often doing the sort of range which is going to take you from sort of 20% down to 20% of the battery up to 100% almost every day. So these are really highly utilized. The cost to operate is much less compared to a diesel. So it's for me, when the options become available and there becomes a bit more competition, I think we're going to see a real acceleration in the number of these heavier good vehicles.
Okay, thank you so much, Paul. And ladies and gentlemen, we are coming to the end of our EV webinar today. Now, if I can get our speakers here to share with us their closing remarks. And what is the one key message that you would like to leave behind for our audiences after this webinar has ended? If I can start with inviting the lady, Kathryn, to share her closing remarks with us.
Okay, cool. Okay, so the trend is showing the automotive future actually is electrical. However, I believe the EV transition still takes some time. So also along this journey, actually there are more changes in the technology or consumer behavior or the players. So the bank, as a bank, we always hear we are very happy to support the companies in the sustainable journey. Okay, that's all for me.
Yeah, and Kelvin, please.
Oh, I have a similar message. EV is here to stay. It's coming. So do prepare yourselves for it and take advantage of the opportunities that arise with this EV wave.
Yeah, last but not least, Paul.
I think we're doing 3 for 3, a very similar sort of message. Yeah, EVs are definitely they're an inevitability more than anything else. I would say, you know, to try and think about them as an opportunity. Really, they're not here. They're not threatening things. They are here to try and create an opportunity for businesses to not only find new revenue streams, but also for businesses to help be part of that fight to go against the climate crisis which we find ourselves in. So I think my takeaway would be to deeply look at these subjects around electric mobility and see how your business can either contribute or can be contributed to with the use of electric vehicles.
All right, fantastic. And so we have seen a growing appetite for EVs from consumer and industries in Singapore these days, and with the strong level of interest and actions that's happening, we hope that we can engage our members and SMEs to go global in EV projects. So on behalf of SBF, we would like to thank Paul, Kathryn, and Kelvin for joining us today and addressing this very important topic on EVs. And also thank you to the Electric Vehicle Association of Singapore for your support. So ladies and gentlemen, SBF and UOB will be conducting free business consultation session for your internationalization and sustainable financing needs. Just email my colleague Jihao to register your interest after this webinar. And if you'd like to learn more about the SBF Infrastructure Committee and the work that we deal with, simply just scan the QR code on the left with your mobile phone. If you would like to know and join our infrastructure interest group, scan the QR code on the right and it will lead you to an online form. Registration is free, and once you sign up, SBF will keep you updated on infrastructure and sustainability projects and opportunities along the way. And last but not least, we would appreciate if our audiences today can take some time to fill up a short survey form administered by a third-party consultant called Forbes Research, which is commissioned by Enterprise Singapore pertaining to this webinar, by scanning the QR code on your screen with the mobile phone. And it'll take you less than just 5 minutes to complete the survey. So once again, my name is Shu from SBF, and I'm very pleased to be your host today. Thank you for staying with us, and stay safe, stay healthy, and happy holidays in advance. Thank you.